At an airbase in the northern Caribbean, the early morning silence was shattered by a red alert that no Venezuelan radar had anticipated. In a matter of seconds, the spotlights illuminated one of the most feared aircraft on the planet, the B-2 Spirit. There was no time for protocols or thorough preparations. What was about to happen only occurs in situations where every second determines the fate of a nation. The ground crew scrambled. Fuel was running low. The doors were closed without a final check. And before the personnel on the ground could even grasp what was happening, the engines roared with a force they should never have used on the runway. An emergency takeoff at full speed. Minutes later, in Venezuela, radar detected an anomaly in the sky. There was no approach record, no pre-existing route, no scheduled flight. Just a fleeting signal, like an untraceable technological phantom. What few knew was that this impromptu takeoff of the B-2 had a motive as urgent as it was dangerous. A diplomatic trigger about to ignite theories, suspicions, military tensions, and an entire country wondering if it had just witnessed a message or a warning. Before starting this video, remember to subscribe and like it. It all began hours before the emergency takeoff. At Whiteman Air Force Base, the United States kept one of its most strategic aircraft on restricted alert. The B-2 Spirit, the stealth bomber capable of penetrating air defenses undetected. They are rarely taken out of their bunker except for top priority missions. However, that night something happened that forced a break from all standard protocols. The Pentagon issued an order to activate the Ascent Black Protocol without explanation to the ground crew. The personnel on the ground understood that when that type of order is issued, there is no room for argument or delay. Any political or diplomatic considerations become secondary. The B-2 had to take off, even if it meant doing so without the complete technical checks that normally guarantee a perfect flight. The bomber was towed out of the hangar with its warning lights flashing. Technicians noticed some engine checks were incomplete, but even they weren't authorized to request delays. A B-2 moving out of its armored shelter in the dead of night sends a silent message that international politics understands without words. When the engines roared to life at a power level rarely used on the ground, several mechanics stood aside, unsure whether they were witnessing an urgent mission or an immediate response to an imminent threat. Something had happened, but no one knew what. The B-2 began taxiing at a speed that easily exceeded the safety margins in the operations manual. There was no room for a slow, gradual climb. As soon as it touched down, the pilot applied full power, and all four thrust management systems activated simultaneously. The takeoff was so violent that the thermal sensors on the runway registered an abnormal heat signature. The aircraft climbed in an extremely tight bank to reduce climb time, ignoring any potential visual detection. There was no doubt. The important thing was not to conceal the fact that it was taking off, but to reach operational altitude as quickly as possible. Minutes later, Venezuelan radar stations detected something that didn't fit the usual patterns. A faint, fleeting, almost imperceptible trace. For the operators, it wasn't enough to classify it as an aircraft, but it wasn't atmospheric noise either. It was a signal that appeared, disappeared, and moved along a trajectory that no conventional commercial or military aircraft uses. Confusion spread like wildfire among the surveillance stations. The report was transmitted to Caracas, and from that moment on, the situation became a matter of national security. Venezuela had a recent history of strict air surveillance, and this almost ghostly echo didn't fit into any database. Meanwhile, in the air, the B-2 maintained a route and flight profile designed to create uncertainty. When the Spirit flies, it doesn't fly to be seen, it flies to sow doubt. Its passage over the Caribbean coincided with military exercises in the region, which fueled speculation. No one knew if it was transporting strategic weaponry, conducting electronic reconnaissance, or simply sending a political message through its mere presence. What's most unsettling is that a B-2 typically never needs to fly over an area to be detected. It can do so without leaving a trace. That it was detected this time meant that someone wanted it known to be there. Venezuela activated secondary radars, low-frequency sensors, and optical systems. Even so, there was no confirmation. The signal would come and go as if the sky were being manipulated. Doubt quickly multiplied. If it was a B-2, why take the risk? Why expose themselves like that? The uncertainty generated its own strategic effect. Every minute of silence was interpreted as a potential threat, as if the United States were reminding itself that it could fly over the Caribbean and disappear without being intercepted. The possible motive for the takeoff began to be discussed among analysts off the record. There were multiple geopolitical tensions, from naval movements in the region to recent economic alliances that unsettled Washington. Some experts considered that the flight might have been aimed at gathering electronic intelligence, testing the response of Latin American radar systems. Others thought that perhaps the B-2 had been deployed to intercept an unknown signal detected in the Caribbean, something that would require an aircraft with extremely high stealth capabilities. A third, more unsettling hypothesis suggested that the objective of the flight had not been in the Caribbean, but farther afield. That the air corridor to the south was only a first phase, designed to conceal a final destination that could have had global implications. But one detail further altered the interpretations. The B-2's flight was extremely short. It didn't perform a prolonged crossing or a sustained operation. It flew inland, generated the signal that triggered the commotion, and disappeared. There was no subsequent record. No images, no confirmations, no official version. A B-2 doesn't fly to an area only to withdraw without a purpose. Whatever that purpose was, it was accomplished in a matter of minutes. This brevity gave rise to new theories among analysts. Perhaps the objective was never an operational mission, but rather to gauge the regional reaction to its appearance. To know how long it would take each radar to activate, what protocols Venezuela would implement, how the Caribbean bases would respond, and which countries would offer immediate support. A rehearsal for a larger crisis. Upon learning of the unofficial reports, the Venezuelan population was divided between those who thought it was a show of force and those who believed the United States had detected a previously unknown risk. The uncertainty became a national topic of conversation. Had a message been sent? A warning? A military exercise? Or something more sinister? The questions multiplied, but no authority, neither American nor Venezuelan, offered an official explanation. Silence became part of the story. Meanwhile, international experts began to point out that the B-2's flight had achieved precisely the objective for which it was designed, to sow strategic confusion. It didn't matter if the bomber was armed or empty. It didn't matter if it was gathering intelligence or simply testing radars. The message was different. If the B-2 decides to appear, no country in the region can stop it. There is no missile, radar, or fighter jet that can respond in time. Its passage left no destruction. Only the unsettling certainty that, if the need arose, it could. The most disturbing thing wasn't the radar echo in Venezuela. It was what came after. Nothing. No press conference, no official statement, no technical explanation. The military knows that when something isn't explained, it's because that something matters too much. And when such a risky flight is carried out without an accompanying political statement, it means the real reason wasn't meant to be revealed. In the end, the B-2 returned to the silence from which it had emerged. Its mission, whatever it was erased from public records. But the consequences outlived the flight itself. Venezuela reinforced its air surveillance. The United States increased its presence in the Caribbean, and the entire region was left with a quiet certainty. When the B-2 spirit moves, it's not to instill fear. It's to remind the world that the question is never where it is. The question is how long it's been there without anyone noticing. Perhaps we will never know what truly motivated that emergency takeoff. Perhaps the documents will remain classified for decades, and what happened will be lost amidst rumors, incomplete accounts, and theories impossible to confirm. However, one thing became clear that morning. Sometimes, power isn't demonstrated by launching a missile, deploying troops, or declaring war. Sometimes, It's enough for a silent aircraft to cross the sky and disappear without explanation for an entire country to understand that there are forces operating at a level beyond the reach of public policy. The B-2 left no craters, no casualties, no destruction. But it left something deeper, a sense of vulnerability. The certainty that if it wanted to enter Venezuelan radar, it did, and if it wanted to disappear, it disappeared. And that if it had wanted something more, nothing and no one could have stopped it. In modern military history, wars no longer begin with explosions. They begin with silence. That flight wasn't noise. It was a calculated, precise, and forceful message. And although no one in the world confirms it, everyone understood. When the B-2 spirit moves, geopolitics trembles. Because true power isn't announced. It simply appears. As always, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like. See you in the next video.